Hello, viewers and subscribers. Welcome once again. The continuation of the screencast number 42 about the Java beginners to professionals screencast. We already talk about a little detail about the different data types and different variable types, and also the different type of existing Java keywords, and also the operators. Just those who are the new in the channels, that they can subscribe the channels and get the previous screencast. If you saw in the channels, there is a in total 1 to 20 screencast about the how can you install the Java and JDK, and also the IDE integrations, and also the last times is different variables types and data types and webpack classes we already discussed about, and different operators and these things. Today we try to discuss with you about the basic object-oriented programming concepts, meaning that the different meaning that the objects, classes, and also the it's every object classes which information is containing the classes, the fields, methods, constructors, and so on and so forth. This is the idea today. We try to cover with you to give it to you really practical and practical and really and real time real life examples about the meaning of the object, classes, and then methods and constructor, and how can you define it, how can you initialize it for both sides, the methods and constructor also. And then we will continue the further next screencast about the control statements. So let's have a look what we have it at the moment. If you look the slide we are talking about today, we discussed this thing already. So we're talking about this object is the instance of class, and every object or instance of class has a state, and it has behavior and has a unique identity in JVM. This is the normal structure. The identity for if you have thousands of classes into the JVM, and every object need to be uniquely identified. That's the meaning of the identity. So that means every object has a state. It has the behavior, means that all respective methods and containing the respective class. This is called the behaviors. A class containing fields, method, constructor, blocks, and then nested class and interfaces. I will discuss this a little bit later screencast about more detail every section of the implementation, because the block, the static blocks, it has a blocks and a static block, and nested class and a static nested class, and interfaces, nested interfaces, and that means this is the things coming later in the later screencast. If you get it in one example, like here, the person.java, the card.java, this is all one of the class, and this class is containing its own fields, method, and constructors. Let's have a start our Java programs. What we have it. So let's understand the basic structure. We can run the Java program, so clean it. Let's see, run it Java program, how it's look like. You see some different objects, constructions. It has some methods in the construction methods, and area calculation methods, boolean calculation methods, and then so on and so forth. We already discussed about how the project structure look like, so I put it like this way. We already discussed about the variables types. We discussed about the different operators, and also today I will try to discuss the class, objects, methods, and construction issues. So this is, I think that is enough for this one today. So if you just simply define the one object and the class, you see the plot information. Plot means if you are living the city area, there's a plots and plot containing the many buildings. That's the definition. So you are living in the buildings. In these buildings is assigned to specific plots. That's like one of the example how it's look like. It's like car objects, car class, and then the person class or employee class, like that. So I use the really practical one example, like how look like the reality, how when we build the softwares, how the object definition is reality done. This is one of the real object, like plot information is containing all sort of informations. So that means you can build, simply go to the package. If you just right button click in Eclipse, you can just go to new and build the class. That's all. Then you give it the class names, and then you have the naming conventions, like the first word of the your class names will be the uppercase, and then so on so forth. You have a second word, then the second word of the should be the first word should be the uppercase, and so on so forth. We already did the one class like plot informations, and then plot information has the fields like the ID. It has a long two types. It's comma separated. As its address ID and plot ID itself, it is a unique ID, and it has a code name, user type, use type, and remarks, and it has the aggregation object like the buildings. So that means just like simple example, like how the objects is class is defined with the other classes. That means if you have a class like plot info class, you can define many other of classes, like is aggregations information with the other classes. That's a really complex example like that. We're not the plain primitive type data. It's a complex object type data. So we have a class in class containing the other. Of course, the other classes should have the aggregation between the aggregation means there is a relationship, or among the classes they have a relationship. So I just put it in a very simple examples like that way. So it's a plot has only single buildings. Maybe the plot has a many buildings. Then you have to build a list of buildings here, and then so on so forth for building the complex constructor, or building the complex method and functions for this class. If I go this class, the building information class, if you see there is many fields, and then it has a own attributes, like in total 10, 15, 16 or 17 information. Most important this one. So building length and building wide, we use these to field for calculating the area and volumes and so on so forth. So this is the idea, look like that way. If you have is very objects, and then object means a class, and class can contain the other classes as like the aggregation, as like the relationship, as like in later case we can discuss about the how call the inheritance, how the call the abstract class and the interfaces, and that's thing we will discuss a little bit later screencast. But the initial idea, you can really clearly understand what the mean the class, what the mean the objects, and how can you define the object, and how can you initialize this object with via the constructor and methods and so on so forth. And this is the idea to give it to you, the very basic idea. How can we continue? So that means we define the class, the plot info class. It has the standard naming conventions like that. It is every class name should have the uppercase letters, and if you have a second letter, then you have the second letter. So here's the plot, the uppercase P, and then info, and uppercase I is there. So this is the modifier. We will talk about a little bit later how can cohesion happening with the different modifier like public, private, protected, and then this is the modifier that we need to be discussed a little bit later part of the section. But in that level, we just define is everything is public, and then because we need to access every part of our application, those classes and those objects and methods and fields. That's the idea. So that means we define the one objects, one class. It has the own fields. It has field like address ID, plot ID, code name, and user type, and remarks. and it has a complex object type like building information object type, and a building information object type had information like the many fields for its own.